भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। So we're reading from Canto 4, Chapter 12. Sorry, Chapter 16, Text 9. आप्यायत्यसौ लोकम् वदनामृतमूर्तिना सानुरागावलोकेन विशदस्मितचारुणा. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. This king, Prithu Maharaj, by virtue of his affectionate glances and beautiful moon-like face, which is always smiling with great affection for the citizens, will enhance everyone's peaceful life. We'll go to the text 10. Avyaktavartmaisha nigudakaryo Gambhira upagupta vittaha Ananta mahatmya gunaika dhama Pritu pracheta iva samvritatma Avyaktavartmaisha nigudakaryo Gambhira upagupta vittaha Ananta mahatmya gunaika dhama Pritu pracheta iva samvritatma Avyaktavartmaisha nigudakaryo Gambhira upagupta vittaha Ananta mahatmya gunaika dhama Pritu pracheta iva samvritatma Gudakaryo Gambhira upagupta vittaha Ananta mahatmya gunaika dhama Pritu pracheta iva samvritatma Avyaktavartmaisha nigudakaryo Gambhira upagupta vittaha Ananta mahatmya gunaika dhama Pritu pracheta iva samvritatma. Word to word meaning. Avyakta, unmanifested. Vartma, his policies. Eshaha, this king. Niguda, confidential. Karya, his activities. Gambhira, grave, secret. Vedaha, his accomplishing. Upagupta, secretly kept. Vittaha, his treasury. Ananta, unlimited, Mahatmya, of glories, Guna, of good qualities, Ekadhama, the only reservoir, Prituhu, King Pritu, Prachetaha, Varuna, the king of the seas, Iva, like, Samvrita, covered, Atma, self. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The reciters continued, no one will be able to understand the policies the king will follow. His activities will also be very confidential, and it will not be possible for anyone to know how he will make every activity successful. His treasury will always remain unknown to everyone. He will be the reservoir of unlimited glories and good qualities, and his position will be maintained and covered just as Varuna, the deity of the seas, is covered all around by water. Purport. There is a predominating deity for all the material elements, and Varuna or Pracheta is the predominating deity of the seas and the oceans. From outward appearances, the seas and oceans are devoid of life. But a person acquainted with the sea knows that within the water exist many varieties of life. The king of that underwater kingdom is Varuna. Just as no one can understand what is going on beneath the sea, no one could understand what policy King Prithu was following to make everything successful. Indeed, King Prithu's path of diplomacy was very grave. His success was made possible because he was a reservoir of unlimited, glorified qualities. The word Upagupta Vittaha is very significant in this verse. It indicates that no one would know the extent of the riches King Prithu would confidentially keep. The idea is that not only the king, but everyone should keep his hard-earned money confidentially and secretly, so that in due course of time, the money can be spent for good practical purposes. In Kali Yuga, however, the king or government has no well-protected treasury, and the only means of circulation is currency notes made of paper. Thus, in times of distress, the government artificially inflates the currency by simply printing papers, and this artificially raises the price of commodities, and the general condition of the citizens becomes very precarious. Thus, keeping one's money very secretly is an old practice, for we find this practice present even during the reign of Maharaj Prithu. Just as the king has the right to keep his treasury confidential and secret, the people should also keep their individual earnings a secret. There is no fault in such dealings. The main point is that everyone should be trained in the system of Varnashrama Dharma, so that the money is spent only for good causes and nothing else. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Ajnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा महारानी सुदर्शन की जय। लक्ष्मी नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय। गौर निताय की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। Hare Krishna. Seeking the blessings of all the Vaishnavas here so that I can speak appropriately on this subject matter. So, we see this context of the Sutas, the Magadas, the Vandis, they are glorifying King Prithu on his divine transcendental qualities, knowing very well that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without any doubt or confusion of his position. And the interesting fact mentioned here is that it is mentioned that his policies were completely unknown, but he was very expert diplomatically and he would always accomplish success. So there was no question of failure in his kingdom. And he was, in the previous verses also we saw that how he was as powerful as all the other demigods. So there was no necessity of interference of other demigods. He would accomplish what other demigods could achieve. So that was the potency of Prithu Maharaj. And it is also mentioned that his treasury was unknown and it was kept secretly. And the reference is given to how Varuna is the deity of the seas. And in the sea, we just see there is only water. We don't see any variety. But in reality, there is a kingdom of Varun Dev, and there are so many life forms within the sea, and so many other things are there. There is so much of opulence within the sea. But to an ordinary eyes, we do not see that. So in the same way, Prithu Maharaj is accomplished all these things by his potency. So it is mentioned that Upagupta Vittaha, the word Upagupta Vittaha is referred here in the purport. That is, he secretly kept it. And Srila Prabhupada writes here that a person should keep his hard-earned money confidentially and secretly so that in due course of time the money can be spent for good and practical purposes. So this is, of course, it is for Rajanya Vamsha, the royal order, and also for the householders. So this is not applicable to somebody who is in the renounced order or who's in the Virakti Bhava. But at the same time, we have to understand that this is not a holy grail for a person to work hard, because the statement mentioned here is one should keep his hard-earned money. So it is not giving us a license to work hard, because it is completely against what the essence, the sara of Bhagavatam is, which is, Nayam deho deha bhajamra loke kashtan kaman arhate vidbhujamya. So we are not meant to work hard, because that is not meant for the human body. Human body is meant for tapasya, definitely, but on the spiritual path. Tapo divyam putragayena sattvam shuddhed yasmat brahma saukyam tvanantam. So even Prahlad Maharaj mentions that tat prayasana kartavyo yata ayuhu vyayaparam na tata vindate kshemam mukunda charanambujam. So one should never do prayas. Prayas means ati prayas, atyahara prayas. So for the sake of economic development, tad prayasana kartavyo, because it ultimately it ends up in yata ayu vyayah param. The energy, the complete bodily energy, the faculty of the senses is completely depleted, and also at the same time we are losing out on the precious human life. So that is why it is never recommended that a human being work hard. And the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam clearly mentions, where Narada is speaking to Yudhishthir Maharaj, that even if somebody is a householder, he should not be endeavoring very hard for economic development, because everything is attained automatically according to our previous karma. So it is said that, nasta dharme na vasu nichaye naiva kamopabhoge yad bhavyam tad bhavatu bhagavan purva karmana rupam. So King Kulashekar is saying that dharma, vasu, that is wealth, and kama, sense enjoyment, these are automatically obtained. Yad bhavyam tad bhavatu bhagavan purva karmana rupam, according to the previous karmic activities. So it is not that we improve our economic development through the process of any vikarma or endeavoring very hard. It does not work like that. So dharma actually leads to kama. Dharma also, takes care of economic development. So it is, religiosity is all encompassing. So within religiosity, one automatically is taken care of his economic development. It is not that religion is separate and economic development is separate. It does not work like that. So there are 4 categories of people. If you have to divide money management, if you have to divide people, so let's say there is a column of personal and then there is dharmic, as Prabhupada mentions here, for good practical purposes. Good practical purposes mean dharmic or some emergency. So there is this category of people who are the first category of people are those who are very stingy when it comes to personally having to spend money, but they are very, very munificent, or they're very spendthrift when it comes to dharma. When it comes to religiosity, they are very, very audarya. This is category 1. So all the pure devotees or advanced devotees, they fall in this category. Then there is the second category where somebody is very spendthrift for himself personally, who spends everything for himself, but absolutely nil or zero for dharma, for practical purposes of religiosity, zero, null, or even for emergencies. Then there is the third category of people who are neither do they spend for themselves nor do they spend for dharmic activities. They are stingy in both dharma and also for themselves. They're like the worst category. And then there is the fourth category where they are spendthrift for themselves, they live opulently, and they also spend very munificently for dharma, for religious activities. So these are the 4 categories. So in the first category, you will find devotees, especially advanced devotees, who do not spend anything for themselves, but they are very eager to engage everything in the Lord's service, in the religious activities. And there is no better example than Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada has been the best in that. Even Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also, I have heard that he would send all his disciples out for collecting alms and donation, And whatever Lakshmi they collect, they would bring back, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would completely spend everything. He would not keep anything, and the next day they are literally back to square one. So they are left with nothing. And they have to again go back and collect donation or alms, and they, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur made sure that we remained completely dependent on the Supreme Lord. He made sure that his disciples were virtually beggars almost every day. Because the tendency of the mind is that we accumulate, we hoard, and we think, we plan for future, whether it is religious purposes, whether it is for Krishna consciousness or personally. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had a completely different mentality. He wouldn't have a farthing for himself, and then he would spend everything in religious activities. So that brings about a change in our mentality. We completely take shelter of the Lord. We depend on the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada also would, he would also mention that not a farthing should be used. Any money that is received in the name, on the behalf of the Lord, not a farthing should be used for ourselves. It should all be used in Krishna consciousness. Today, so many devotees, probably they may be getting donations, and it is being collected in the name of Krishna consciousness. Because we are representing the Guru Parampara, we are representing their lordships. So whatever is received, it has to be used in the service of the Lord. So sometimes we may end up taking a mobile phone or a laptop. If it is being engaged in Krishna consciousness, then yeah, we are safe. But if it is being used, personally, then that is a trouble. So that way, one has to be very careful on what we are receiving and how we are utilizing it. So that becomes very important. So some examples I wanted to share from Srila Prabhupada's life, how he was, very good at, money management. There is this incident in Vrindavan where Srila Prabhupada was giving darshan, evening darshan, and many people were visiting him. And one Indian man came and he spoke, and then he placed a 10 rupee note at Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, and he left. And then Prabhupada took that note and he gave it to his personal servant, Harishauri Prabhu. He said, take it, I'll collect later. And he took it, he put it in his pocket. And then probably you may have heard it. So a few days passed, 2-3 days. Somehow Harishauri Prabhu forgot to give back that money to Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada started, telling, I think you are forgetting to give something. Maybe you are forgetting. He said, no, Prabhupada, I don't think, I have forgotten anything. And then Prabhupada stopped talking to him for a couple of days. And whatever he would speak, he would not respond. So, like for example, if I give, say, 1 lakh to some devotee, I give to him, and he is supposed to return it back in a month. 6 months have gone through, and he is not even talking about it. Then I also do not feel like asking, because it may appear as if I am greedy or I am money-minded, so I may not ask. But he is also not remembering. Now what do? So I stopped talking. Then, that will trigger some thought in him. Oh my God, why is he not talking to me? Did I offend him? What did I do to him? Oh, maybe, I took that money. Then he'll remember, I should return back that money. Something like that, it's a, a technique which Srila Prabhupada used. He stopped talking to him. Then Harishauri Prabhu was thinking, he just couldn't remember because it was just a 10 rupee note. So, although it was very valuable at that time. And then Srila Prabhupada was planned to travel to Australia, and all his things were packed. And then Srila Prabhupada told Harishauri Prabhu, I think we have forgotten something. No, I have packed everything, Prabhupada. We have not forgotten anything. Then Srila Prabhupada looked at his pocket and he said, I think you have to give me something. Then he could see that Prabhupada was looking at his pocket, and then he suddenly remembered, oh, yes, Prabhupada, this 10 rupee note which was given in donation to you. And Prabhupada said, oh, it's all right. Srila Prabhupada, acted as if, some insignificant thing, as if, it was not a very critical thing. So that way, he was very, very cautious how Lakshmi is utilized in Srila Prabhupada, in Lord Krishna's service, and how one should be very careful. How, every bit of money, every piece of rupee, should be properly utilized. It should not be squandered off. And in another instance where Srila Prabhupada had transferred a few thousands of rupees to this Hyderabad temple, and there was this devotee called as Mahamsa Swami, and he called Srila Prabhupada and said that no money has come. It was already 7 days and no money was received in the wire transfer. And then with a little bit of inquiry, it was found that somehow the money was lost in the transaction, and Srila Prabhupada had to fight with this bank official and then sort out the issue. And he made sure that the last 7 days transaction, the last 7 days in transit when the money was missing, he made sure that the bank paid the interest for that also. So they had to have them calculate the interest and pay. So that way, Srila Prabhupada was very careful with every piece of money. Although the movement had sufficient centers, a lot of money being generated through book distribution and being utilized in the constructions of the temple. Still, Srila Prabhupada was very, very careful with even, very simple, minute things, because they all belonged to Krishna. He would also be upset even if, if a fan is turned on and it is left and nobody is there in the room, he would become angry, he would become upset. He would say, Americans, you are all just, you are good at wasting things, wasting the energy of the Lord. So even as simple thing as a light turned on or a fan which is running, Srila Prabhupada would be upset. There is another instance where the BBT had sent, like $25,000 to Shyam Sundar Prabhu, who was in charge of collecting the funds. And in UK, there was an Indian man who had, good knowledge in the stock market, and he would tell the devotees that, if at all you guys have any money, you should invest all your money in this gold bullion, because the gold prices are going to go up in the next week. He had some good knowledge. So, Shyam Sundar Prabhu thought that, this is a very good idea. So, he had this $25,000 which he received from BBT in America. And then he flew from UK to Switzerland, Zurich. There he went to Credit Suisse, and then he went and he opened an account. He deposited that money. And somehow the other devotees came to know that, Shyam Sundar Prabhu has gone to Zurich. And this message went to Srila Prabhupada also. Very interestingly, by some divine arrangement, Prabhupada flew from India to Zurich. So Shyam Sundar Prabhu was completely shocked. He said, Srila Prabhupada, why are you here? No, there is no temple, nor did I invite you here, to come and, give some class or some public program. And then, Srila Prabhupada wanted to know what he's doing. And then they go to this Credit Suisse. And then on that particular day, when it was predicted that, the gold prices are going to go up, they went to that bank. And in the bank, there is this ticker tape. Ticker tape is moving, which tells the prices, which are going up and down. So Srila Prabhupada would keep looking at that ticker tape, gold price, the gold bullion price. It's one of the instruments. So the gold bullion price, it is going up, down, and whenever it would go up and up, Prabhupada would become very happy. He would, hold on to the seat. Yes, yes. So that way, the whole day they were watching. And very interestingly, that $25,000 became fourfold. It became $100,000. And at that time, all the other disciples of Srila Prabhupada, the other sannyasis, they came to know that both of them are up to something. So they all flew. They spent money for flight and they came all the way till Zurich. And they were all there in the hotel room. And some argument happened, how is this, Srila Prabhupada, how is that, Shyam Sundar Prabhu is engaged in gambling? How can this be allowed? Then Srila Prabhupada would say, yes, you're right, gambling should never be done. What Shyam Sundar Prabhu did is wrong. And Shyam Sundar Prabhu was staring at Prabhupada, because he was the one who was supporting him. And now in front of everybody, he's telling that, whatever he did was wrong. And then after this incident, Srila Prabhupada, the next day, he actually transferred the ownership of that account to himself from Shyam Sundar Prabhu. He withdrew the entire money and he went back to India. And nobody knows what happened to that money. Probably Srila Prabhupada completely used it up in the Mayapur project. So that way, of course, this is not for the sake of imitation, but here we are learning the essence that, a devotee, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vigneyana Bhujaya. So, how a pure devotee acts for the sake of Lord is very interesting. It is inconceivable. We cannot understand, nor is it meant for imitation. So, he just took that money, he disappeared, and never was there a time that such an incident ever repeated. Nor is it meant for repetition, nor does it mean that devotees should follow these kind of investment strategies or whatever. So that way, a pure devotee is very careful, and he understands how to utilize the Lakshmi in the service of the Lord. Then there is the second category, which is they spend for themselves. They spend thrift for themselves. And when it comes to dharmic activities, it is completely nil. They are gross materialist. These gross materialists are those who are hard workers, who endeavor very hard, and they spend for themselves. Weekend shopping or traveling, visiting places, going to resorts, etc., etc. There are so many ways of sense enjoyment. So they fall under this category. As Prahlad Maharaj says, Kudumba poshaya viyan nijayur na buddhyate artham vihatam pramatta sarvatra tapatraya dukkhitatma nirvidyatena swakutumba rama. They take all the tapatraya, all the suffering of working hard, day and night they work hard, they accumulate the wealth for the sake of maintaining the family, kutumba poshaya. And they want, my family is all in all, that's it. There is nothing beyond that. And nirvidyatena swakutumba rama. He is a kutumba rama. That means he takes pleasure, arama, in maintaining the family. And he is nirvidyatena. He never becomes disgusted or detached from his hard work. He continues to work hard. Even when he is rejected in his old age by his same family members who he tried to maintain, he is not disgusted. He is simply satisfied in working hard, maintaining them, being, abused by the same family members. So that is the category of the gross materialist who fall in this category. And then Prahlad Maharaj further says, Vitteshu nitya abhinivishta cheta vidvamscha dosham paravitta hartu pretyeha vatabhi ajitendriyastad ashanta kamo harte kutumbi. So Vitteshu nitya abhinivishta cheta. Although he is intelligent, vidvamscha dosham paravitta hartu. Although he is intelligent, but still when it comes to money, vitta, he will use all kinds of illegal means of trying to acquire money, even at the cost of harming others. So there are many, many professions where if it is a gain for one, it is definitely a loss for another. So this is a very harmful thing. So this is what happens. If it is gain for one man, it is a loss for another person. So the whole world is actually topsy-turvy because of this only. Where, there are capitalists who, earn more and more and more and more. All these industrialists, they want to earn more and more and more. And that leaves a certain section of people always in poverty. This is the lopsided situation of the current economic condition, where there is no, equality. It is not equally distributed. Like a king like Prithu Maharaj, he will make sure that, the wealth is equally distributed. All the people are equally taken care of. So that doesn't happen. Here, Srila Prabhupada is talking about how the government, artificially, they inflate. The inflation happens because, they want to print currencies. When an economy is in distress, when the economy is not moving, like it happened during the time of COVID, where there's no consumption, everybody is sitting at home watching TV. So maybe, the cable network, that was the one which was running. But apart from that, no other businesses were running because there are no consumers, no consumption. So without this demand and supply chain, without this, demand and supply, the economy cannot, run. So there should be a demand, there should be a supply, there should be industrialization. So when this was not happening, certain countries like, USA, they printed more and more money. Certain governments don't do it, some governments do it. But when they print more and more money, then that causes another disaster. Because there is much more money in circulation in the country, and everybody has sufficient money. And when everybody has sufficient money, then I can buy anything. Because I can buy anything, then there will be no supply. And because of that, they don't want to so easily give away to people, so they start increasing the price. If everybody, gets, 10 lakhs because the government has printed money, and the tomato is only 10 kgs, 10 rupees per kg, then, I can go buy a shop itself. I don't have to. So everybody has the buying power. So that becomes a very lopsided situation. Then there will be there will be shortage. So what they do, they increase the price of commodities. The tomato will become 200 rupees per kg or 400 rupees per kg. When it increases, the buyers will reduce. So that is why the printing of money actually causes inflation. It simply inflates. And it causes a disaster, and the whole country actually collapses. So it is a very false economic model which the current civilization has implemented. That is the paper currency. This happened in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, earlier, a few years back, they were in economic crisis, and they printed money like anything. And the inflation went to such an extent that ordinary common commodities, they were being sold at the price of gold, literally at the price of gold. So that was the cost of the commodities, and the whole country simply collapsed. So that way, this is not at all a viable solution, the current economic model. So they do not know. They are complete, the governments, they do not really know how to well protect the treasury, nor do they have any treasury. And this, brings about a disaster in their lives. So this is the second category of people where they are, they spend for themselves, but not for dharma. Then the third category is where um, neither for themselves nor for religion, dharma. So they are very, this category falls under, demoniac, very demoniac, stingy for themselves, nor for dharma also. They do not spend anything for dharma. Bhagavad Gita talks about these category of people. Idam adyam maya labdham imam prapsyase mano ratam. Idam asti idam api me bhavishyati punardhanam. So I have so much. Now tomorrow I'll have so much. So they plan. They are not satisfied. They are never satisfied. An industrialist, he is never satisfied. I have grown so much. The Ambanis or the Adanis. I have grown so much. Now I will stop. No, it will never come. It will never occur to their mind that I have to stop. Now, how do I grow more? How should I grow more and more and more? This is how they think. So it is, some of them, end up in disaster also. There are many such, people who, in the process of attempting to grow, they even destroy their current existing situation or their wealth, and they are completely, literally on the roads. So that is why there is no limit to the greed. So all the greedy people fall in this category. Stingy means, somebody who is very greedy, like, so, like Vaman Dev says, Yadrachayopapannena santushthas vartate sukham, na santushthas tribhir lokair ajitatma pasadete. Somebody, if something is coming of its own accord, he is completely satisfied in it. But na santushtas tribhir lokair ajitatma, somebody whose senses are uncontrolled, ajitatma, then he can never be satisfied even though he has tribhir lokair. All the three planetary systems were in the hands of Hiranyakashipu. He had all the demigods at his disposal. He had made one of the demigods as his steps, foot to walk on him. And he made another demigod ulta, he hung him upside down. I think it was Shanidev. Like that, he had all the demigods as menial servants. He was that powerful. But he was the most unsatisfied person. He just didn't know, he was so upset. He wanted more and more and more and more. He had all the benedictions which Brahma gave. He had all the wealth. He had all the demigods at his disposal. But he was completely unsatisfied. That is the nature of greed. As Mahatma Gandhi said that, there is enough for every man's need, but there is not enough for even one man's greed in this world. Because greed, keeps a person completely unsatisfied. So this is the third category. And the fourth category is who spend for themselves sufficiently, opulently, and who also opulently, munificently engage the Lakshmi in the service of the Lord. So this devotees, who have inherited wealth, or who are opulent, or pious people who have inherited wealth, they spend them for themselves, and they spend for dharmic activities. So we have many such examples in the Shastra, and accordingly, a person is engaged. But the Lord is not affected by all our material conditionings. He is not interested in that. It is only our bhakti. So, like Lord Krishna, when he visited Mithila, he visited two devotees. One was Bahulashva, yeah. And the other devotee was Shrutadeva, yeah. So Shrutadeva was a Brahmana and Bahulashva was the king. So they both were pure devotees and they both equally, welcomed the Lord. And Bahulashva provided all facilities, very opulent. And the Lord was completely pleased. And Shrutadeva had nothing. He just, put up a mat. He saw that, the Lord was coming with all the rishis. And he just welcomed and he gave, very bare minimum things. And the Lord was completely satisfied with him also. So the Lord was, he is Bhavagrahi Janardana. He accepts our pure devotion. So, but when somebody has money, so that has to be utilized properly in the service of the Lord. So we see here Prithu Maharaj how he kept it secretly so that it could be engaged in times of distress. When there is a drought, when there is famine, at that time, the king will make sure that he'll use all his wealth so that, the citizens are taken care of. That is emergency. So that is a very responsible position. And this is a age-old tradition, Srila Prabhupada writes. So even people were keeping money, like I remember, my great-grandfather, they used to say that, he had dug within the house. Generally, they keep it, they dig a place and they keep a pot of gold coins and they cover. Not that they are greedy or stingy, but they keep it as an emergency so that in the situations when there is a drought, famine, they know they can take out because that time, it becomes very difficult to even acquire food or water. Or even when there is attack by enemies, like, a Muslim ruler is taking over another town or a village, or even during partition, when Indians had to come from Pakistan to India, or Muslims going from India to Pakistan, they had to give up all their property. So in such situations, what happens? All these emergency funds, that comes to a great help. So that way, that was the main reason why traditionally, anything which was in excess, they would try to, you know, hold back. And yes, when Srila Prabhupada is speaking about keeping hard-earned money confidentially, he is talking about the money which is acquired through honest means, through under the Varnashrama Dharma, not by any illegal means. So that is what it means. Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Anybody has any comments or questions? No, there's no reference, but it is the mentality of different individuals. Beyond this four, there is no fifth category. Yeah. Emergency. Ah, correct. Four categories are there. There is one. There are two columns. One is for self, the other is for dharma. That's it. Dharma or emergency, all that falls under responsible usage, like that. Only two. Yes. Yes. A very common question everybody asks. Why they are happy and good, why devotees are struggling, all that. It's yad bhavyam tad bhavatu bhagavan purva karmanu rupam. According to the previous karma, they are in a good position, so they are materially stable, they are financially stable. So yes, but in the ultimate material existence, nobody can be stable. So yeah, death anyway takes away everything. But so long they are there, they have to utilize the wealth in the appropriate way in dharma. Yeah. Yes. Bhagavad Gita says, Kamaistaistair Hrita Jnana Prapadyante Anya Devata. Tam tam niyamamastaya prakrityaniyatas. If they are worshippers of demigods, then they are facilitated materially by the demigods. But generally in the age of Kali Yuga, nobody is a pure demigod worshipper also. So if somebody is opulently situated, then it should be considered as previous karma. It is as simple as that. There is no confusion there. In America, there are no dharmic people. If somebody, they are meat eaters, they eat beef, but they are living in opulent mansions. Now, how do we explain that? They are not even following dharma. Some of them. Previous karma. It is nothing but previous karma. Now, what they are doing now, for that also there will be reaction in the future. So, somebody who knows this knowledge, why somebody is, stable and someone else is unstable, he is not bewildered because he knows, because the Shastra talks about it. So there will be no confusion there. Maybe you can come here a little. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Yes, to speak.
The statement which is made here, is it? Correct. Yes. So what is contradicting here? Yeah. Difficulty is only in the mind, basically. So the mind is not surrendered. So when there is surrender, then automatically a devotee follows it. I'm personally not able to follow. So I know. So we understand, what our levels are. So the difficulty is in the mind. The instructions are there. It doesn't change. It is a matter of just practicing it. It is a matter of having Shraddha. When there is weak Shraddha, when we doubt, Srila Prabhupada mentions in one of the lectures, 31st December, there's a lecture. You can just go check in this audio is considered. Where Srila Prabhupada says that, surrender means, completely depending on the Lord. Not that if Krishna fails, then, my bank balance will protect me. So like that, when there is no Shraddha, then, we try to plan, engage, and we try to interpret our own planning. So all that happens. The instruction is very simple, and it is possible to follow when, our surrender levels are high, and we have complete dependence on the Lord. It is not, there's no question of difficulty. We see Kolavech Sridhar, he didn't have a problem. He was not an IT professional, but he didn't have a problem also. 50% he engaged in the service of a pure devotee like Mother Ganga. So it's a matter of Shraddha. But here, the statement what is mentioned here about saving hard-earned money, this is not a holy grail. This is not, everybody should follow this. No, it is not like that. This is for those, definitely this is for the householders and for the Rajanya Vamsha, but it does not involve hard work by making a day and night together and working hard and then saving. Not like that. Whatever comes of its own accord, in your honest means of working hard, that can be stored, saved, and then utilized in emergency purposes. That way. This is one of the limbs for one to practice Krishna consciousness. Our Krishna consciousness does not depend on our donations. There's a Bhagavad Gita shloka which talks about it talks about how what is that? I forgot. Okay. It talks about how, bhakti is through Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasem. These are the limbs of bhakti. This process of charity, dana, is nothing but it is helping a person to become apparigraha. Apparigraha is what? Yeah. False proprietorship. That false proprietorship, anartha, is removed. Everything belongs to the Lord. So, nirmamo, apratigraha. These are the qualities which develop by giving charity. It helps sustain our bhakti. It is not a main limb, but it is helping us in bhakti because it helps to remove this anartha. That is why Ishavasimidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat. Tene tyaktena bhunjita magradakasya svedhanam. So everything belongs to the Lord and we are engaging that in the service of the Lord. So that way it will help us overcome our attachment. So generally a person who is there in this material existence, he has attachment. He thinks it is my possession because I worked hard for it. So it is my possession. So that is how we think. So to overcome that, to develop this apratigraha, we have to donate. Yeah. There are different levels, it is, the whole thing is complicated. According to different consciousness of different devotees, they deal differently in these matters. Yes, Prabhu. Correct. Correct. All right. All right. So that way, we can balance. Very well said that, for religious spiritual activities. Of course, there are extreme examples like Jayananda Prabhu. He would engage all his 100% Lakshmi in maintaining the temple, San Francisco temple.